Hello and welcome to Lone Star Silver Screen, a podcast about everything that exists at the intersection of Texas and the movies. I'm your host, Austin Zook, and today I'm going to be joined by a very good friend of mine, Mr. Alex Gonzalez. Alex is a journalist based in Dallas, Texas, whose work has been featured with D Magazine, The Dallas Observer, Collider, Variety, and many other outlets. He's been a good friend and role model for me in my own journalistic endeavors, and I could not be happier to have him bringing his keen artistic insights to the show today. Alex, welcome to the show, and do you want to tell the people what we're here to talk about today?
Today we are talking about one of my all-time favorite movies that was filmed in Austin, Texas, Support the Girls. It takes us in the day of a life of Lisa, who is the manager of this Hooters-esque restaurant over in Austin, Texas. And, she's just trying to make it through her day. She faces a bunch of difficulty during the shift. The cable's out, so she doesn't have the TV before the big fight. So she's trying to grapple with that. And the night before, one of the girls got in a fight with her man and ended up going to jail. So she had to raise money to bail her out and then get legal fees for her. And then she's also dealing with a divorce in her personal life. So she's dealing with a lot, and she has to put on a good face for her customers and for her young girls servers. So yeah. And, a lot of people, when they take into consideration, what servers are dealing with or what hospitality workers are dealing with, I feel like they don't really consider there might be a lot going on in their personal lives. Someone could be trying to raise tips to get out of a bad situation. Someone could have gotten in a fight with their man 5 minutes before their shift, and now they have to put on a good face. There's a lot, that people go through. And, before I was a journalist, I worked in the hospitality industry and I worked retail jobs. I worked a lot of these jobs where customers kind of take their anger and their moods out on us. And, if we returned the sentiment, they would not be happy if we did them like they did us.
Absolutely. No, I think that's one of the things this film gets so right. This was released back in 2018. Like you said, it was filmed here in Texas. It was written and directed by Andrew Bajowski, who is this renowned indie director. He's known, on his Wikipedia page, it calls him the godfather of mumblecore. So he's someone who's been around for a while. He's made a number of films after this, and this is by far my favorite movie he's made. But for a second, I want to take a step back. I want to go back to you and your experience working in the hospitality industry. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Were you working in restaurants specifically?
Yeah, I served at various restaurants. I served at one called Life Kitchen, which is a organic health food place. I served at El Phoenix. I served at this restaurant called Smoke over in Bishop Barts, and they had a second location in Plano that I was at briefly. They're closed now, but it was a really great, I hate to use the word upscale because, journalists overuse that word, but it was upscale barbecue Southern, and it was really good. I'm still on good terms with a lot of the chefs and the managers from those places, but yeah, so that was my experience. A lot of it was just trying to make some money throughout college.
So one of the things that I love about this film is how it features kind of the day-to-day of being in a restaurant. I feel like the supporting cast, all of the girls that they brought in for this movie are really, really well drawn. The performances are solid, and some of them are making silly decisions, or their characters are, but it feels very honest. And, I used to work at, I worked at Red Lobster when I was in college, and obviously it's not the exact same environment, but I feel like a lot of this is true to life in terms of the dynamics you have between coworkers and the people working the front of house and the cooks and so on and so forth. Does this replicate your experience a little bit, from your time in those environments?
I'd say so, yeah, just because, there's a lot of diverse characters when you work in restaurants, so to say. There's that archetype, that Haley Lou Richardson playing the wild girl, the one who's always in good spirits.
Oh, yeah.
There was a Shayna McHale, better known as Jungle Pussy. She was playing the struggling mom, trying to find childcare for her kid. And there was AJ Mashalka's character who gets a random tattoo on a whim and now has to face the repercussions of it. You find all those people there, and unfortunately, early on in the movie, there's one character who is caught like hiding in the vents of the restaurant. And then Lisa, who's Regina Hall's character, she's like, hey, I know that was you. I'm going to have to fire you. And like, she like can sympathize and empathize with the situation, but she has to do like what's best for the business because at the end of the day, it is a business.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that's really incredible about this movie is Regina Hall's performance, because she is amazing in this film. But also, they really capture that feeling you get whenever you're working kind of a bad retail or food service job. If you have a really great manager, they really do make you feel kind of like family. And she has some motherly energy in this film. Before we got on to record today, I was looking back at her filmography, and this is the first film that I ever saw her in. I was not aware of Regina Hall before this. I mean, were you a big fan of her work prior to seeing her in Support the Girls?
She does like a lot of comedy roles, and this is like a really good, like serious role. So I feel like that's a really good role to be introduced to Regina Hall in, and she's really great. She always like steals the scenes in anything she's in. I love satires. I love funny shit. So like I love the scary movies. I love the parody movies. Like they're all like, okay, there's one called like Not Another Teen Movie, which like spoofs all like the corny teen movies. There's one called like Superhero Movie with Drake Bell. I love like all those like satire movies. They get like panned by critics on Rotten Tomatoes, but I don't give a shit. They're funny. They're funny.
As far as Regina Hall goes, she and Shayna McHale, also known as Jungle Pussy, who is also in this film, they reunited for a movie that came out this year that is currently in the awards conversation. Do you want to say what the name of that film is?
One Battle After Another.
I think they're both so great in this film and doing something really different from what they do in One Battle After Another. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, One Battle, it's like very like serious in tone. It's very much a commentary of what's happening in the world right now. It's very much commenting on a potential revolution, an impending revolution. So it's very different than, a day-to-day at a restaurant job. But I do think that in the two movies we've gotten with them together, they are very good together.
I'm going to read you the best actress nominees for films released in 2018. The 2019 Oscars. And I want to know if there's anyone who you would sub Regina Hall for her performance in Support the Girls. Ready?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so Olivia Colman won for The Favorite. Also nominated were Yalitza Aparicio for Roma, Glenn Close for The Wife, Lady Gaga for A Star Is Born, and Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me?
Okay. Oh, God, that's really hard because, like, that was a good year for cinema. I definitely feel like I wish I could see Yalitza in a lot more things. I know she's gotten a lot of offers, but she's very selective about what she's been in. Lady Gaga was really good in A Star Is Born. Fuck, dude. I mean, I like Melissa McCarthy too in Can You Ever Forgive Me? I don't know. It would probably be Melissa McCarthy just because, like, she's good in that movie, but out of those movies, that's the one I go back to the least. I'm sorry. I mean, I love Melissa McCarthy. But yeah, I'm sure she'll have something else, that's really great.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about some of the other performances. You already mentioned AJ Michalka, who comes in and she has this crazy tattoo of Steph Curry on her side. And so Regina Hall is like, just to let you go. You don't want to, but you have to do that because of this. I wanted to ask you, if you had to get an insane tattoo of an athlete, what would you get?
God, probably, I don't know, Luka Doncic. You can't even hate him, for playing for the Lakers. I mean, he's loved being a Dallasite and, he's killing it on the Lakers too. So it's like, you can't even like be mad at him about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So earlier you mentioned Haley Lou Richardson. I think is really great in this movie. She plays kind of the bubbly right-hand woman of Regina Hall's character. You a Haley Lou Richardson fan? Do you respond to her work in other films?
Okay, I mean, I think this is the first movie I can remember seeing her in, because I think during the pandemic, I saw her in another movie called Unpregnant, and it's like where she and Barbie Ferreira go on a road trip to get an abortion because it's illegal in Missouri, so they have to go to, I think they're in Arizona. I think that's where the road trip is. So yeah, she's really great in that film. On White Lotus, a lot of people hated her on White Lotus, and I'm like, no, you have to go like revisit her entire filmography, to see how great she is. So yeah, I mean, I'm a Haley Lou Richardson fan. I like her. She was on this show called Divorce, like on HBO.
Yeah.
like with Sarah Jessica Parker.
And Thomas Hayden Church.
It was canceled like after 2 seasons, but that one was really good. She does a lot of modeling. She does a lot of like makeup campaigns, and she's really like confident. She has like this really like scene stealing presence. So I think she's really cool.
I couldn't agree more. Like I said, earlier, I think there is a lot there that really feels true to life about just kind of those interpersonal dynamics between coworkers.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you if you remember the first time you saw this film.
Yeah, I remember my brother like had brought it, like it was like winter of 2018, so it was like a few months after it had like a festival premiere. And he was like, "Oh, I bought this movie on iTunes. Do you want to watch it?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure. It sounds interesting." Yeah, I hadn't heard of it, but I saw it was like on Barack Obama's like list of best movies of the year. So I'm like, okay, sure, it must be good. And yeah, I mean, I watched it, and my older brother, he's like a fancy Harvard graduate, so he's never like worked in any of these like restaurant jobs in his life. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so real. Like from the very first scene, like where she's like crying in the car before she has to go into work, I'm like, oh my God, been there. And
Well, I wanted to ask you because this is a pre-COVID movie. This movie came out in 2018. Things have changed maybe a little bit since then, just in terms of, the expectations for retail and hospitality workers and what that environment looks like. Do you feel like there's something timeless about this film? Does it still feel relevant to you?
yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like the camaraderie of the coworkers that you have when you work these types of jobs, whether it be retail, whether it be service industry, those coworkers, and I hate to say this because it's kind of a toxic phrase, but they do become like family. And I say that's a toxic phrase because, like, whenever you do like a job interview and like the person interviewing says like, "Oh, we're like a family here," it usually translates to, "Oh, there's no boundaries, and we're gonna expect you to overwork." But like, they do kind of become like family, like those kind of confidants that you rely on. Maybe you vent about your emotional problems, or they offer you a place to stay whenever you're in a bad situation, or they'll give you a ride to and from work whenever your car is in the shop or something like that. These kind of people become family. Or sometimes you'll go after work and have some drinks and maybe just scream from the rooftop. Something like that.
That's such a cathartic scene. I love that they end on that with them just all kind of letting out all of their pent up emotions after they've all, they've lost their jobs. They're in this really low point, and they've just gone through this interview process that I would say is not very humanizing.
Yeah. Yeah. And no, that part is also like still really relevant today. Like I remember like one time, like someone who's really close to me, we were looking at jobs at restaurants, and I was like helping them redo their resume, and they were looking at like restaurant jobs because they were trying to get back in the game. And then they saw like on the application that they have you submit your Instagram handle. And then they were like, why are they having me submit my Instagram handle? And I'm like, are they trying to like have me like see how many followers I have like in order to promote the restaurant? And I'm like, no, I think they're trying to see if you're a hot girl and trying to see if they want to hire you or not. So I do think that kind of still exists like within the service industry today.
I wanted to ask you about one of the subplots in the film, because Regina Hall's character, in addition to everything she has going on at Double Whammies, the restaurant where she works, is actually going through separation from her husband. And we get a scene with the husband where he picks her up and he's driving her, and they go look at an apartment for him to move into because they're supposed to be splitting up. It's basically intimated that he is someone who is suffering from depression, maybe not showing a lot of interest in just getting out and doing anything. She makes some comments about how he's always just sitting at home, and she always knows what he's going to be doing when she walks in. That plot line, I think, is really important for developing Regina Hall's character, but it's not something the movie necessarily had to have. You could have this just be very focused on the workplace antics and not had that personal dynamic. What do you think that adds?
So, I mean, I definitely, okay, I'm going to like maybe contradict your point there. I do feel like it was like kind of necessary, especially like came to like humanizing, so to say, like these managers, because we see them take charge, and we hear a lot about like managers who are very uptight, managers who are toxic, and we also hear a lot about managers who don't have like a lot of boundaries, who like take their work home with them and like kind of like maybe motherify their employees. But I also think one of the lines that sticks up to me like is when she's telling her husband, I can take fucking up all day, I can't take not trying. And at the same time, throughout the movie, we see her mess up, but she continues to try. She continues to persevere no matter what gets thrown her way. So, I mean, I do think that kind of parallels the subplot,
Yeah,
kind of parallels with the main plot.
I love that. No, I think that's a great point. Now, as far as the overall film, are there any scenes or moments that you really love? Anything that either made you laugh or that you think really stands out as something special this movie does?
I do think it captures a lot about like, I don't know how to say this because I think whenever Austin is like depicted in movies, like you always see like the hippie side, we always see like the quirky live music side, but we don't really see like the day to day in people's lives. A lot of the girls at the restaurant, there's like someone like trying to raise money for college or like someone who's like studying for exams. And then we see like one girl who's like dating the professor. And, in a way, it's kind of centered around UT, maybe not entirely, but, a lot of people in Austin go to UT and they're trying to make a way to, get by, get their lives together. But I think like what sticks out to me is, at that final scene where we have Lisa, where we have Haley Richardson's character, when we have Shayna McHale's character, all like on the roof and they're screaming. These are three young women who come from like different backgrounds, who are all dealing with different hardships in their life, but they're bound together by the camaraderie they share in the restaurant, and they just kind of have this cathartic moment where they're screaming on top of the roof.
You were talking a little bit about Austin and how this film feels very true to a certain portion of Austin to you. I mean, we're both Dallas guys, but do you have a real affinity for Austin and the culture of that city?
I do. I really like going to Austin for festivals like ACL, like South by Southwest. I also do have family down there, like over in the Round Rock area. So it's nice to visit them. But I also feel like, a lot of times like Austin like gets labeled as this quirky city with hippies and all these like avant-garde starving artists and all that. There are people there who are studying or maybe who are in Congress and politics, trying to make a better life for themselves, or, maybe they are trying to finance their music career through serving tables or bartending. A lot of people like think of Austin as kind of an escape, but it's a very real city with very real people who are really trying to make a name for themselves.
If you were going to recommend this film to someone, and let's say they watched it and they enjoyed it, are there any other movies or even, TV shows that you would recommend that they check out if they responded to this one? Anything else that kind of deals with similar themes that you care about?
So I always say that if you like that show, The Bear on Hulu, that you should Support the Girls a watch, because I feel like it's equally as honest about working in the restaurant industry, if not more. I'm trying to think what else. Maybe if you like Abbott Elementary, you might like this. I mean, this is a little bit darker in tone than Abbott Elementary, but it has like similar plot lines of being overworked, underpaid, and, finding camaraderie among your colleagues.
Scott Tobias wrote a piece about this, and he called it one of the great modern films about American labor. Do you agree with that? Are there any other films about American labor that you think people should check out? Is that something that you've even dove into?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel like I relate to a lot of these films, like, Support the Girls, or like earlier this year, there was like One of Them Days with Keke Palmer and SZA. And I've been in a place where I'm like, holy shit, I'm fucked if I don't come up with my rent money in a short amount of time. Definitely movies like Office Space, Friday, even stuff like The Office, and more recently, the spin-off The Paper. It hits hard with journalists because, the landscape is very much underfunded.
You're someone who writes a lot, and you write a lot for a lot of different outlets. I mean, tell us about that a little bit and what that experience is like as somebody trying to make ends meet, doing something they're passionate about, something that is valuable. I mean, people respond to your work, they read it. What are the challenges that you come up against as someone in your field?
I feel like, I hate to say it, but a lot of people would rather like watch a TikTok of some influencer, reviewing a restaurant rather than read like a full like 1,000-word review. Social media has its pros and its cons, and it's definitely affecting the media landscape in more than one way, but there are still people who like have passions for art and culture like us, like who dive deep into these movies, who want to do the supplemental reading. And I feel like that's who I do it for. But definitely as a freelancer, as someone who was like formerly a full-time freelancer, now I have a quote unquote day job. But as someone who was like formerly a full-time freelancer, sometimes you're waiting weeks for your payments. Sometimes people have, we have a net 14 policy, which means you'll get paid in 2 weeks, or you'll have a net 30 policy, which means you get paid in a month from the time it was published and the invoice was processed. I think the longest time I've ever had to wait was 90 days. That's like a quarter of a year. Yeah, dude, it's crazy out here in this landscape. And I feel like that's what a lot of people don't get. And then there have been times where some friends will ask me to go out and I'll be like, no, I mean, I've got to pay rent next week and I'm a little bit stretched for cash. They're like, what? You're always publishing stuff. You should be balling by now. And I'm like, that's not how it works in this landscape, unfortunately.
So circling back to support the girls, just as we wrap up the conversation, is there anything else that you want to say about this film, or anything you think people should know if they haven't been exposed to it yet?
I don't know. I always say this is one of my comfort films. And then I recommended it to one of my friends as a comfort film. And then after he watched it, he was like, bro, what the fuck was that? That was so dark. And I'm like, really? Okay, sometimes it helps me to feel those emotions, and I'll invite those emotions in, invite those feelings in, and just kind of like let them out as a form of catharsis. But if you're expecting something that's like more funny, haha, no pun intended, because Andrew Bujalski directed a movie called Funny Haha. But if you're expecting like something more like lighthearted, something more like humorous in tone, you might not get this movie. But if you've ever worked in retail or service industry, you will definitely relate to almost every moment of this film.
Well, and I would say that, to your point about kind of letting those emotions in, I think films like this are so important because it is kind of a safe way to experience those emotions and maybe have that catharsis you're talking about, where it's like it's happening to the characters on screen, and maybe it kind of rhymes with what's going on in my life, but it makes you feel less alone. I think that's one of the fundamental values of art like this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's a very human movie. It's a very personal story. There's at least one or two characters the viewer can relate to in this movie.
Absolutely. Now, you did mention Andrew Bujalski's Funny Ha Ha. Have you seen any of his other work or explored any of it?
So I was thinking about this. I remember I saw like Funny Haha. I think it was like 2003, 2004. It was at the Angelica Theater here in Dallas. And I think I just kind of like wanted to tell people like, oh, I saw this cool indie movie called Funny Ha. And then I was like, oh, I've never heard of that. And I'm like, yeah, you probably haven't heard of it. It's an independent movie. It's not like a major. So I remember I was like probably like 9 or 10 years old telling people at my school that, because I wanted to look all cool and cultured. And I remember liking that movie a lot. I can't tell you anything about it because I don't remember, but yeah, I mean, I think Andrew Bujalski is great. He's wonderful.
I think that would be something for you to revisit and just kind of compare your feelings now to 9 or 10-year-old.
No, or like sometimes like I was always kind of like that, or like I would get like, do you remember Voss water and how it would come in those glass bottles?
Absolutely.
I would bring one to school and I would get like one bottle, and then like I would like refill it, like, and come to school with it every day and act like I was all sophisticated with my Voss water. Like, oh, I don't drink anything but Voss. Oh my God. Young Alex is something else, I'm telling you.
You still do that? Do you have anything like that where you're like, oh, this is me flaunting?
No, I mean, like, I'm very, like, a lot of people are like, okay, you get to stay at this hotel, or like, oh, you get to go to this game. But I'm very, like, transparent about the fact that I was invited, or that I was hosted at this restaurant. I'm very transparent about that. I'm very open about the fact that, if I wasn't getting these invites, I probably couldn't afford this type of lifestyle. So I think it's better, like, I feel like you relate to people by being more honest. And, I might not have the most followers on TikTok. I might not have the most followers on Instagram, but I know how to reach the right people.
And that's the most important thing. Your audience can be targeted as long as, they're paying attention and you know what it is that you're trying to promote.
Yeah, exactly.
If anybody wants to check out your work and see the places that you're getting invited to and all of the amazing coverage you're doing at these different outlets, where can they go?
You can follow me on Instagram, Alex G Writer, Writer, all one word. And you can follow me on TikTok, Substack. It's the same handle on everything, Blue Sky, Threads. Just find me.
Okay, fantastic. Hey, man, thank you so much for doing this. This has been fantastic. And you really are one of my favorite writers. I love reading everything you do. And I think you just have such an amazing mind when it comes to cultures.
And that was my episode with Alex Gonzalez on Support the Girls. As always, if you enjoyed the conversation, please remember to rate, review, and follow us wherever it is you get your podcasts. It really helps people find the show. I'll be back next week talking to another good friend of mine, Mr. Zach David, about another Texas film, Hell or High Water, written by Taylor Sheridan and directed by David McKenzie. The following week, we will have our Best of 2025 episode. I'm going to be joined by my good friend Nick Holloway for that discussion, who you may have heard previously talking about No Country for Old Men with me on the show. I've got some amazing stuff planned for 2026, and I really hope that you're able to join me for the ride. Make sure you tune in next week, and until then, I'll see you at the movies and on the dusty trails of Texas. Bye.